Hey, little buddies! I'm Zion. How are you today? I hope you're doing okay. Do you see my glasses? Do you wear glasses? They really help with vision, don't they? Keep wearing your glasses. Do you see this hat? Do you know what kind of hat this is? It's a hard hat. I like to wear it when I think really hard and constructively. Do you have a hat? Put it on. If you don't have a hat, if you don't have glasses, that's okay. We can all put on our thinking caps. It doesn't matter what you have. What matters is you came to see us at the Big Lake channel, and now I'm about to read to you. Welcome to Reading with Zion on the Big Lake channel. The title of our story is called San Carlos from the Beginning, The Tale of the Pygmies by Eliza Z. Nostal. It was a muggy morning. The sun had just come up, and it was already 82 degrees. It was May, and the weather had been so unseasonably hot and humid. The beautiful mountains of San Carlos were always glistening with dew in the early mornings. But this morning, you couldn't even find a sparkle on them. The terrain from the mountains down to the sandy beach were desert dry, hot, and even acrid at daybreak. It seemed more like a Middle Eastern setting if it weren't for all the trees that lined the mountains and the enchanting blue ocean that reflected the sun like fire beams. The gentle trade winds that were blowing now would soon end as the sun climbed higher into the sky with each passing moment. The east sunrise would in just a few hours give way to a torch blazing out of the west. No doubt today looked like another scorcher, but at least the morning was quiet. The morning sun was bright. There was no shortage of light. It escaped no one's sight. The noise was sealed airtight. Looking deeply out onto the hillside of the mountains, where sunburned forests and tattered and parched leaves replace what used to be rolling green hills, you could see what seemed to be a wave of rustling color moving beneath the canopy of trees. It was a constant speckle of color jumping and popping like popcorn in a kettle. It was the hungry pygmy rabbits and guinea pigs. These little creatures had all but eaten every available green plant and food source, which typically blanketed the mountainside. Usually, you couldn't see them from a distance. But because the landscape was so bruised and empty, you could now easily see them moving back and forth. They had all but devoured every pea, carrot, and celery plant, which were naturalized and grew freely. They had eaten all the wild cabbage leaves, and only the stalks remained. It was obvious from the barrenness that they had started in on the grasses, which grew so lusciously, and were now being stripped to the carpet of the forest. It was like a clean, well-swept floor. You could see the rabbits and the guinea pigs racing back and forth up the hillsides and down to the shore to take a refreshing drink of water. Even if the land was dry, The oceans hadn't run out of water, at least not yet. Yes, it was baking hot, and it was a challenge to keep up all that hopping, running, and foraging, even if it was what they did for a living. Indeed, there is a story about how those little herbivores came to be on the sandy shores. The sandy, beautiful shores of San Carlos, a dream within a dream. Upon the shore of a beautiful reservoir, there washed a brave and daring herbivore, Ray Salvatore, wondering what he could explore. Come a little closer and I'll tell you more. In the lush hills and the mountain ranges along the Pacific Ocean coastline, there lived an entire village of pygmy rabbits. What an astounding village they had! In the vast, wide open land of mountains and flower-covered, grassy fields that stretched on forever, they had abundant, water-filled interior lakes and tributaries that watered the land and provided drinking to all the animals and wildlife that surrounded the village. Water was always available in those beautiful deep blue mountain lakes, even after the water from the melted snow had stopped trickling down from the mountains that fed all their favorite watering holes. There was even a great aquifer that the pygmy rabbits could travel to. Their enormous underground tunnels to reach the caves where the aquifer lay. The fluffle of pygmy rabbits had lived in their native lands for hundreds of years, and their network of tunnels went on forever like a great highway system underground. It had been a rite of passage that when the snow bunnies reached 6 months old, that they would make their first journey to the aquifer. They would travel mile upon mile underground through the tunnels to reach that great underground aquifer inside one of the most amazing caves that was filled with huge icicle-like formations called stalactites that glistened like diamond-covered snow. It was in this cave that they would have their first drink. It was a rite of passage that signaled adulthood for them, to begin their own families and have their own little snow babies. They were now called snow babies because even though bunnies of all sorts could be born year-round, the snow bunnies were born at the sacred time and season when the snow mountains were full and at peak, which signaled that water would always be provided in abundance long into the season. A huge snow in the mountains meant there would be an abundant surplus of food because their watering holes didn't dry up and the bunnies wouldn't have to travel to the enormous underground system for water each day to reach this aquifer. Make no mistake, the journey was difficult. It therefore was necessary that bunnies from their fluffle be taught the way to reach this aquifer. It was the snow bunnies, those born in spring who were the select group, would become leaders in their fluffle. This journey meant that the bunnies born in the snowy mountains were full. They would know what to do when hard times came, when the water table would be low, and the food and the water would be difficult to come by. But this journey also meant that as long as they knew where there was a seemingly endless supply of water, they would survive even in harsh conditions. Ray Salvatore was the elder leader of the fluffle of the pygmy rabbits. He was like the great-grandfather to the herd of rabbits. Ray Salvatore had lived for more than 3 times the normal lifespan of a pygmy rabbit, and he was revered amongst his fluffle. They believe that Ray Salvatore indeed was the anointed one. When Ray Salvatore was born, he was born all alone on that day. No other baby bunnies in the fluffle would share a birthday with him. This in itself was unheard of. There were thousands of expectant mothers in the village that were due to give birth at any moment. Not a single bunny was born that day in the village. Normally, hundreds of bunnies would be born every single day. But Ray Salvatore was born all by himself on that day. Also, on the day Ray Salvatore was born, over 100 inches of snow fell in the mountains that surrounded the village. When Ray Salvatore was a new snow bunny, he had reached 6 months old. It was time for his great journey to the aquifer to learn the way when hard times would come. The leader at the time was Elder Luis, and the trip had been so difficult for him because Elder Luis was old and not very strong anymore. Elder Luis led the new group of snow bunnies across the many miles of tunnels, and once they had reached the cave aquifer, he taught the baby bunnies to lower their heads and take a long sip. This instruction and first sip meant that the snow babies would now become adults and were expected to become leaders in their village. The snow bunnies were so excited as they took their final sips to leave the beautiful aquifer. Elder Luis also approached the water to take a sip, but he slipped and fell into the great body of water and started to drown. Rabbits can swim, but they don't like to at all. Once their pelts get wet, it's like trying to swim in a heavy soaked coat. Elder Luis was struggling to swim and trying to save himself. All of the other bunnies were afraid to get in the water, for their fur coats would pull them under. But not Ray Salvatore. He jumped up and over until he knocked down one of the stalagmites. And Ray Salvatore then knocked one of the stalagmites into the water, and then jumped on top of one of them and raced over to save Elder Luis. He pulled him out of the water onto one of the giant stalagmites, and he started to lick the water from his pelt and trying to dry it. Ray Salvatore drug him back to the side of the cave where the other snow bunnies were watching, and Ray Salvatore said, "We must surround Elder Luis, and we must all together hop around him to create heat to warm him up." So all the snow bunnies began hopping feverishly, and they soon created a blanket of heat around Elder Luis. Ray Salvatore said, "We have to take turns covering him to keep him warm until the morning so he can lead us back." The other snow bunnies took turns throughout the night in groups of 4, laying around Elder Luis like a great blanket of heat. One curled up on his head, another curled up on his feet, and the other 2 bunnies lay on each side, keeping him snuggled in warmth all night. When morning came, the bunnies had to start back home. They knew it would take them all day to crawl through the miles of tunnels to reach their village. There was no food in the cave. There were just stalagmites. Stalagmites and beautiful geodes and crystals that littered the cave floor. And they were beautiful to look at and a source of healing for sure, as they were filled with all types of minerals, but not much for a bunny to eat. The edges of those crystals were razor sharp and very dangerous to hop across. They would have to leave this underground wonderland to get above the ground, or they would surely starve. And the only food along the tunnels might be a root or 2, but not enough to feed all of them. And if they troubled the roots too much, it would cause the tunnel to cave in. They would have to make their way back while the ground was warm. And the tunnels would be warm enough to help them move faster and get out of the cold dampness of that cave. Then Elder Luis hopped over to a pile of crystals and used his front paw to wedge a tiny pebble. And he carefully placed it in his mouth and hopped back over to Ray Salvatore and said, "Thank you, my son, for saving me yesterday. But today, you must save your brothers and sisters here, and you must carry a message from me to the village, to the Fluffle, and to our vast herds throughout the land. That today, you are indeed the anointed one, and shall lead them forward. You shall preserve and protect them. You must leave now and lead the other bunnies back to the village and get above ground to feed in the lush fields. Go quickly." Ray Salvatore said, "I would lead them back, but I don't know the way. What if I take the wrong turn in a tunnel?" Elder Luis spit out the crystal pebble in front of Ray Salvatore and said, "Place this in your chi and keep it there. The minerals from it will bless you and give you power to know the way. You have already been set apart from the day of your birth as special. You have already shown phenomenal strength, bravery, and leadership by saving me yesterday. You must save the bunnies in this journey with you. And I declare this day that you will become a savior for our great Fluffle. Go now. My time is through. I will lie down by this beautiful water, in this beautiful aquifer, in this wondrous cave. And when you come again to bring the new baby snow bunnies, I'll be here watching." With tears he was holding back in his big bunny eyes, drops began to fall from Ray Salvatore's long eyelashes. As he picked up the pebble-sized crystal and buried it in his cheek, he said, "Thank you, great elder. I will not let you down." Ray Salvatore then turned and led the now adult snow bunnies back home safely to their village. As the bunnies was leaving the cave, almost a mile away from the great aquifer, they could hear the echo of an enormous splash. A great thundering that shook the tunnels and caused them to fall flat. As they regained their footing, They picked their heads up and moved faster, making it back to village in half the time they expected. And when they made it back, this entire group would also become the greatest leaders the village had ever known. Don't take too much. It costs too much. We've lost too much. We haven't thought it out enough. Over the course of years, each time a new group of snow bunnies would make the journey with the now great elder Ray Salvatore, they would pay honor to great elder Ray Lewis by loosening a small pebble-sized crystal and placing it in their cheeks, and all together then dropping them into the great aquifer. It created a great echo, loud enough to be heard clear back into the village, miles away. The end. To be continued. Thank you for watching the Big Lake channel. Please like, follow, share, and subscribe to the Big Lake channel. The Big Lake channel is also on YouTube, which is what you're probably watching now. It's on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, and please check out our Spotify playlist. I've been updating it. And if you wear glasses, please keep us in mind. We all need to see better sometime. I hope your days are filled with much sunlight. And have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Please come back to the Big Lake channel soon. I'll have more stories for you. And more wacky words. Goodbye. Have a fantastic day.